Well, hello, and welcome again to the 2012fad.com. I'll be your host for this evening, and my name is Charlie Bluehawk. Last night we talked about closing U.S. borders and how, as equity for the debts of the United States of America, which is today not a republic, not a nation, it is actually today a privately owned offshore corporation. And you and I are pledged as collateral for that corporation's debts. Thanks to President Theodore Teddy Roosevelt, who signed an executive order when he was president, you and I, our children and their children, are now slaves. Because we're born not in a nation, not in a republic, but as assets for a corporation. And since the day we are born, we're owned. We are property. You see, in the United States of America, slavery was never outlawed. The ownership of those black slaves was just transferred. It was transferred from the rich white landowners to the federal government. And then it was expanded to include anyone born in the United States. You and me. Well, that's not actually true for myself. I actually filed a document with the IRS, another privately owned offshore corporation actually based in Puerto Rico, that's been illegally stealing money from the people of the United States for almost 100 years now, declaring my sovereignty. I am a sovereign person. I am a nation unto myself. I belong only to myself. And because my tax attorney in the state of Washington knew about this, knew how to do it, a few hundred of us who belong to her organization are now free. We are actually sovereign and unto ourselves. And because under satanic law, under black magic law, under the rights of black magic ritual, which controls every aspect of the U.S. law today, I'm free. I can't be held responsible for their illegal taxes because they don't own me. I declared my sovereignty. I own myself, and therefore I stand outside of their black magic laws and their rituals. The IRS, a privately owned offshore corporation, steals $500 million an hour from the people of the United States. They transfer that money to another privately owned offshore corporation called the Federal Reserve Bank. Now, the Federal Reserve Bank takes that $500 million per hour that the IRS illegally steals from us, and the Federal Reserve Bank ships it off to Europe, where it's never seen or heard from again. This was proved by, actually by a fellow by the name of Grace, who was hired by President Ronald Reagan to figure out where all of our tax money was going. And in that 600-page report, which I used to have a copy of, he says that not one nickel of the monies collected by the IRS remain in the United States. But for me, I'm free. And now you might want to consider freeing yourself. Just a thought. And so tonight, I thought we might chat about non-disclosure of the truth. The truth being that you are not only cattle, you're also a slave. And you're not just a slave, you're collateral. You're equity for the debts of the corporation known as the United States of America. You're digits in a computer. Your only value to the corporation is a physical asset. We've chatted before about how if you get a new copy of your birth certificate, there's a number in a circle stamped on there. And if you happen to know any stockbrokers, you can ask them to run the history of that number, of your history. And you'll discover that you are bought and sold as an asset around the world. That's where the concept of hedge funds comes from. See, the bankers don't want your money anymore. They want your signature, because your signature is worth much more than just money. The United States is not a sovereign nation. That's the first thing you have to understand. It's no longer a government of people. It's no longer a republic. It is a corporation. It's a privately owned corporation with its offices based offshore. You are not a citizen of a country. You are a physical asset. You are a resource the company sees fit to use. You're a human resource. See, the concept of human resources was again created 100 years ago, not for the benefit of people, but as a way of a corporation to keep track of its assets. You are an asset of a corporation. You are not a citizen of a country. So for the sake of argument, let's say, for example, you work on a secret government project. And before you can begin work, you have to sign a non-disclosure agreement. And I've signed these. I work for Raytheon. Through Raytheon, I work for NASA. And thank the gods I never was involved with anything, scary. I did, however, see very scary things when I worked at Hughes Aircraft in El Segundo. Hughes Aircraft is actually was two big cities in El Segundo. There was the north section and there was south section. I was in the south section. And I saw some really scary things at Hughes Aircraft. One day I was invited to walk into this office. They were having trouble with their computers. Come on in, Charlie, we need your help. And I walked in, and I knew I shouldn't be there. It was something at the time called the Land Soldier Project. It was basically how to turn an individual soldier into a one-man army. And I had remembered this from an episode of The Outer Limits from when I was a kid. And I swear to you, it looked like the same outfit that I had seen on Outer Limits. Here was a guy in battle gear and a personal computer and laser stuff. And there's posters on the wall. And I'm just standing there with my mouth open looking around saying, guys, I don't think I'm supposed to be in here. Come on in, Charlie. We've got computers that need fixing. I said, okay. So I saw lots of really scary things at Hughes Aircraft. And it was very strange. The buildings in the section of the Hughes Aircraft that I was in, these were monstrous buildings made out of pure concrete. And the walls must have been 3 or 4 feet thick, pure concrete. And the ceilings were 30 or 40 feet high. And so it was very interesting when you're walking through these corridors of this massive building with these massively heavy walls. The walls would begin to vibrate. And you'd swear that you were actually lighter than you normally were. To feel this massive building vibrate and then to sort of levitate off the floor. That still creeps me out to this day. So I've seen a lot of scary things. None of it at NASA, thank God. So anyway, let's say you're working on a secret government project. And of course, you're not actually working for the U.S. government at that point. You're actually working for a U.S. government contractor. And if you actually bother to read the document, and most of us don't, you'll notice that you're not signing a confidentiality agreement between you and the U.S. government. It's between you and this privately owned offshore corporation doing the work for the U.S. government, which of course turns out to be another privately owned offshore corporation anyway. Basically the thing is, this non-disclosure agreement you signed where you agree not to talk about the things you see at a privately owned corporation's job site. Guess what? It's not legal. It's not binding. And the things that you've seen on these job sites that you know are wrong, that you know are illegal, that you know that people need to hear about, you need to talk about it. It's a trick to fool you. Like, for example, if you are unfortunate enough to still be involved with the IRS, they actually make you sign agreements stating that you will not talk about anything that happens between you and the IRS. It's their way of isolating you from other people that they've abused. It's a way that they, a privately owned offshore corporation, can steal your money and again give it to the Federal Reserve Bank, another privately owned offshore corporation, and then they send that money at $500 million per hour to Europe. And we never see it again. But the IRS makes you sign documents that you won't talk about what happens between you and the IRS. Guess what? That non-disclosure agreement you signed with the IRS, all the horrors you lived through that were done to you, that you saw, it's not a legal document either. Not in a free country, not in a republic, not in a constitutional republic. So when you sign one of these documents and you're treated like cattle, like a slave, that's a violation of the Constitution of the United States of America that was our republic. And the only way to get that republic back is to go ahead and talk about everything you saw and to talk about everything that was done to you, because you are not alone. You are not the only person out of 7 billion souls on this planet that this has happened to, even though our masters want you to think that you're all alone and you're the only one that this is ever going to happen to. Because other people have been threatened, other people have been tortured, other people have been robbed by these privately owned offshore corporations, just like you. And you need to talk about it. And you need to stand together with them and say no. All I can do is point these things out to you. It's entirely up to you to decide what you're going to do. Me, I'm free. My soul belongs only to me, what's left of it. My body belongs only to me because, frankly, no one else wants it. And I've had so little food to eat these last couple of months, there's really not much left of me. But I belong to me and no one else. No privately owned offshore corporation whose majority shareholders are Satan worshippers practicing black magic ritual have any control over me. They don't own my soul because I took it back or never gave it. I don't know. So what about you? What will you do? For all of us here at the 2012fad.com, this is Charlie Bluehawk. I'm wishing you, I really am wishing you a really good day, and reminding you that you and I, we actually make the universe around us. So do the universe a favor. Keep at least one good thought. The 2012 Fad is brought to you by Coffee and Blood, Love Letters Between the Dead, a series of 5 erotica horror novels about a fallen angel fighting his way back to regain his own soul, and how the CIA war against the human race, their black magic, captures and traps him in the body of a mind-controlled slave designed to hunt down and to kill their god, their Satan.